The rain poured like the sky was trying to wash the city clean. Neon lights blurred into ribbons on the wet asphalt. And somewhere between the sound of thunder and the echo of car horns, a man stood motionless beneath a flickering street lamp. His name was Arthur Vance, a billionaire whose name once symbolized brilliance, innovation, and power. Tonight, though, he looked like just another broken man lost in a storm, his expensive coat soaked, his eyes hollow, his hands trembling as he gripped a crumpled photograph. The photo was of his wife and daughter. They were smiling in the sunlight of a day that felt like another lifetime. Now that same photo was all he had left of the world he'd built and lost. "Sir, you okay?" A voice croaked through the noise. Arthur turned sharply. A man stood by the alley wall, wrapped in layers of ragged clothing, holding a battered umbrella that had more holes than fabric. His beard was wild, his shoes worn through, but his eyes were calm, kind, and strangely steady. Arthur's lips parted, but no words came out. The homeless man took a step forward cautiously. "You look like you've been standing there a while. You'll catch your death in this cold." Arthur blinked, disoriented. The irony of being warned about death by someone who probably faced it every night made him want to laugh, but all that came out was a whisper. "I don't care." The man tilted his head. "Maybe not, but you should." Arthur looked away, clenching the photograph. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've lost." "No," the man said softly, "but I know loss when I see it." A silence stretched between them. The rain drummed harder. Arthur's phone buzzed again and again in his pocket, missed calls. Messages, the world demanding his attention, but he didn't reach for it. He just stared into the dark street like he was waiting for something, or maybe someone to take him away. Finally, he said in a voice cracked by exhaustion, "I can't fix it." The man smiled faintly. "Maybe not alone, but you'd be surprised what can be fixed if you start small?" Arthur frowned. He almost walked away. But something about that tone, gentle, certain, cut through the fog in his mind. "Who are you?" "Name's Eli," the man said, shifting the umbrella so it covered Arthur too. "Used to be an engineer. Used to fix things for a living. Guess I still do, in my own way." Arthur's eyes darted to him. "An engineer?" "Yeah, not the fancy kind like you, I bet," Eli said with a chuckle. "Just the kind that kept old engines running, fixed radios, patched roofs. Anything to make something broken work again. Funny thing, though, after a while you realize most things break the same way. Doesn't matter if it's a machine or a man." Arthur let out a slow, unsteady breath. "You talk like you've figured life out?" Eli shrugged. "Nah, I just stopped pretending I could control it." For the first time in days, maybe weeks, Arthur felt something stir inside him, a faint spark of curiosity or maybe relief. Here he was, a man worth billions, standing beside someone who owned nothing but the clothes on his back, and yet the balance of peace seemed reversed. They stood there as the rain eased into a drizzle. The city hummed with restless energy, but for a moment the world felt still. Eli finally said, "There's a diner down the street. Warm coffee if you've got a few bucks. Or if you don't, they still let you sit a while. They're kind like that." Arthur hesitated but followed. The diner was nearly empty, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the window. The air inside smelled of burnt coffee and old memories. A waitress with tired eyes gave Eli a knowing nod. She clearly knew him and poured 2 steaming cups without a word. Arthur sat stiffly in the booth, staring at the steam curling up from his cup. Eli sat across from him, smiling faintly. "You know, I used to come here every night after work. Back when I had a job, a house, a wife. She'd meet me here sometimes. I'd tell her about all the things I fixed that day. She'd just laugh and say, 'Eli, not everything in life can be fixed with a wrench.'" He chuckled. "Turns out she was right?" Arthur looked up. "What happened to her?" Eli's smile faltered. "Cancer, quick one. Took her faster than I could understand. After that, I stopped fixing things. Stopped showing up. The world moved on without me, and I let it." Arthur swallowed hard. The man's quiet acceptance of loss felt heavier than his own grief. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be," Eli replied. Life breaks us all in different ways. The trick isn't to stop it from breaking, it's to keep finding the pieces worth saving. Arthur leaned back, his chest tightening. You sound like you've made peace with everything. I tried to fix everything, my company, my family, my reputation, and I lost it all anyway. Eli studied him for a moment. You built a world of machines and money, but maybe you forgot how to fix people, including yourself. The words hit Arthur like a slap. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he couldn't because deep down, he knew Eli was right. Arthur stared at his reflection in the diner window. For years, he'd seen himself as a creator, a man who could solve anything. But now he saw only a stranger with tired eyes and a broken heart. I lost them because of me, he whispered. My wife, my daughter. I was too busy chasing perfection to see what really mattered. Eli nodded slowly. And now? Arthur's eyes glistened. Now I don't even know what to fix first. Eli reached into his coat and pulled out a small, rusted pocket watch. He placed it gently on the table. Start with this. Arthur frowned. What is it? Stopped ticking years ago. I keep it to remind myself that even when time stops for one thing, life keeps moving. Go on, see if you can fix it. Arthur hesitated, then took the watch carefully. The gears were jammed, rusted from years of neglect. It's beyond repair, he muttered. Eli smiled. Everything is until it isn't. Arthur stared at him. Then, for reasons he couldn't explain, he began to work. He found a toothpick from the table, a napkin, even used the tip of a coffee spoon to nudge the gears. It was absurd, clumsy, but it gave his shaking hands something to do. Something to believe in. Eli watched quietly, sipping his coffee. After a while, Arthur sighed. I told you. I can't fix it. Eli leaned forward, his eyes kind but piercing. Maybe that's not the point. Maybe it's not about fixing what's broken, it's about learning why it broke in the first place. Arthur froze. The words echoed in his mind like thunder. Outside, the rain had stopped. Dawn was beginning to soften the skyline. For the first time in a long time, Arthur felt the faintest trace of warmth, not from the coffee, but from something deeper. He looked at Eli, truly looked at him, and realized that this man, this homeless, weathered stranger, was more whole than he had been in years. Eli reached out, placing a hand over Arthur's trembling fingers. You can't fix everything, son, but you can start by fixing how you see it. Arthur swallowed hard. How? Eli smiled. By remembering that even broken things still have value. Sometimes they're what teach us the most. Arthur nodded slowly, eyes misty. He didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time, he wanted to find one. Outside the diner window, the world was waking up. Cars rolled by, people hurried to work, life moved on. And for a man who thought his life was over, that simple truth felt like a miracle. Arthur turned the broken watch over in his hands, watching the faint gleam of light on its cracked glass. He didn't fix it that morning, but something in him shifted, something small but real. He looked up at Eli, and for the first time, managed a small, honest smile. Thank you. Eli chuckled. Don't thank me yet, son. We're just getting started. And somewhere deep inside Arthur Vance's shattered heart, a voice whispered back the words he hadn't said in years. I can fix it. The next morning came with a weak sun pushing through a blanket of gray clouds. Arthur hadn't gone home. He didn't even know where home was anymore. His mansion stood miles away, empty, echoing with memories he couldn't bear to face. But for some reason he found himself back at the same diner. Sitting across from Eli, a paper cup of coffee between them, Eli was humming to himself, fixing something small on the counter. Arthur squinted. It was an old transistor radio, its case cracked and its dials missing. You still fix things even now? He asked quietly. Eli grinned. Of course. Keeps my hands busy. Keeps my mind still. Sometimes the little things remind me that life isn't as complicated as we make it. Arthur leaned back, watching him work. The way Eli handled the broken radio with patience, care, and quiet respect felt like a reflection of how Arthur used to handle people. Before he stopped seeing them as people and started seeing them as parts of his empire. You know, Eli said without looking up, you never told me what it was you couldn't fix. Arthur sighed deeply. Myself? My family? My daughter won't even speak to me. My wife, he hesitated, voice breaking. She died thinking I cared more about my company than her. Eli didn't respond right away. He simply listened, like every word deserved space. That's heavy, he said finally. But grief's like rust, it eats away at what you love until you clean it off and oil the joints again. Takes time, but it's possible. Arthur frowned. You talk like pain is mechanical. Eli chuckled. Maybe it is. You let it build up, it locks the gears. You face it, you loosen them. Arthur looked away. He'd spent years tightening every screw in his world until it suffocated him. Now, sitting here with a man who had nothing, he realized that maybe nothing wasn't the worst thing to have. Eli, Arthur said quietly. How do you wake up every day like this, no house, no job, no plan, and still find peace? Eli put down the screwdriver, his eyes soft but sharp. Because I stopped fighting what broke me. You can't rebuild a house while standing in the rubble crying over it. You gotta clear the ground first. Arthur stared at him, his mind flashing with memories. The boardroom, the hospital room, the arguments, the silence. The rubble of his life was everywhere. Eli picked up the radio and turned the dial. It crackled, then sputtered, then came to life for a few seconds before fading again. See? He said. Almost there. Just needed a touch of patience. You got that in you? Arthur smiled faintly. I don't know. I used to have it. Somewhere along the line I traded patience for profit. Eli leaned forward. Then trade back. Arthur let those two words sink in. Trade back. Later that day, the two men walked down the streets together, Eli moving slow and steady, Arthur keeping close behind like a man trying to remember how to walk without rushing. Eli waved at the flower vendor, the bus driver, even a kid playing with a paper airplane. Everyone seemed to know him. Everyone smiled. Arthur was stunned. They all know you? Eli shrugged. When you've got nothing, people see you. When you've got everything, they stop looking. The words pierced Arthur's chest like a truth he'd avoided for years. He had surrounded himself with power, money, and admirers, but not one of them had really seen him. Not like this stranger did. They reached a small park, its benches wet from the night's rain. Eli sat, motioning for Arthur to join him. Tell me something, he said. What was the last thing you built that wasn't for money? Arthur had to think. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I don't remember, he said finally. Eli nodded. That's your problem right there. You stopped creating for joy. You only built for reward. Arthur frowned. You sound like my daughter. Smart kid, then. Eli smiled. What's her name? Clara. The name left Arthur's lips like a prayer. He hadn't said it aloud in months. She's 24 now. Studies art therapy. Thinks I'm the reason her mother got sick? Eli looked at him, eyes filled with empathy. And are you? Arthur's throat tightened. No, but I didn't make it easier. I missed chemo appointments, forgot anniversaries. I kept promising I'd make it up to her after this deal, after this project. But there was always another after. Eli sighed softly. You ever notice how after never really comes? Arthur nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm realizing that now. They sat in silence, listening to the soft hum of the city. Then Eli stood and said, Come on. I want to show you something. They walked several blocks until they reached an abandoned workshop. Dust covered the windows and the sign above the door was faded but still legible, Eli's Repair and Restore. Arthur looked at him in surprise. This was yours. Eli nodded. Used to fix everything from radios to bicycles. After my wife died, I locked the doors. Couldn't bear to touch a thing. He pushed open the door with a creak. The inside smelled like time dust, metal, and memories. Arthur stepped in carefully, eyes scanning the room. Broken clocks lined the shelves. Tools lay rusted on the workbench. But despite the decay, the place felt alive, like it was waiting to be reborn. Eli said quietly, Maybe it's time someone fixed this place. Arthur frowned. You mean me? Eli shrugged. You said you could fix things. Maybe not all at once, but you can start here. Arthur looked around. He didn't know why, but his chest felt warm. Why me? Eli smiled. Because you've got hands that remember. You've just forgotten what they were made for. That night, Arthur stayed. He swept the floor, organized the tools, even oiled the old clock gears. Every click, every turn of the wrench, felt like a heartbeat returning to rhythm. At one point, he paused and said, Eli, why are you helping me? Eli chuckled. Maybe because you remind me of who I used to be. Maybe because no one helped me when I fell apart. Arthur nodded slowly. Then let me help you too. Let's fix this place together. For the first time, Eli's eyes softened with something that looked like hope. All right, Mr. Billionaire, let's see if you can handle a hammer. Arthur laughed, an honest, unguarded laugh that startled even him. Days turned into weeks. The shop began to change. The dust cleared. Broken things started to work again. The neighborhood noticed the sound of hammers and laughter replaced silence. People began dropping off old radios, lamps, and clocks for repair. Some didn't even want them back. They just liked watching something be fixed. And slowly, Arthur began to change too. He stopped checking his phone. He stopped wearing suits. He started sleeping on a cot in the workshop, waking with purpose. But one afternoon, while sorting tools, Arthur found a newspaper left on the counter. The headline read, Arthur Vance declared missing. Vance Industries board names new CEO. He froze. His name looked foreign in print. The company he'd built from nothing had moved on without him. He felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just quiet. Eli noticed his expression. You okay? Arthur nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I finally am. Eli smiled. Good, then you're ready for what comes next. Arthur tilted his head. And what's that? Fixing what can't be fixed, Eli said simply. It's time you talk to your daughter. Arthur's breath caught. He hadn't realized how deeply those words would hit. I don't even know if she'd pick up. Eli handed him an old rotary phone they'd restored together. Then start dialing. Arthur stared at the phone, his heart pounding. He dialed the number from memory, fingers trembling with every turn. The ringing felt endless. Then dash click. Double quote. Hello? Her voice. Softer, older, but unmistakable. Arthur's throat tightened. Clara, it's me. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. Dad? He closed his eyes, tears gathering. Yeah, sweetheart. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I needed to call. I needed to tell you I'm sorry. The line stayed quiet for a moment that felt like forever. Then Clara said, voice trembling, Why now? Arthur smiled sadly. Because someone reminded me that broken things still have value. And I think I finally understand what that means. A faint sob came through the phone. You really hurt us, Dad. I know, he whispered. But if you'll let me, I want to start fixing what I broke. Even if it takes the rest of my life. Silence again. Then, through her tears, she whispered the words that shattered and healed him all at once. I miss you. Arthur couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face. Eli stood quietly in the doorway, watching with a soft smile. When Arthur finally hung up, he looked at Eli. She said she wants to meet. Eli grinned. Then you better clean up. You've got someone to fix things with. Arthur laughed through his tears. You know, Eli, I thought you were just some man who showed up out of nowhere. But maybe you were exactly who I needed. Eli nodded. We all show up where we're needed, son. That's how the world fixes itself. Arthur looked around the workshop once broken, now alive, and realized that maybe, just maybe, he was being fixed too, outside. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks, casting a golden glow across the room. The old clock on the shelf began to tick again, steady and strong. Eli looked at it and smiled. Told you. Everything can start again. And Arthur, standing there in the light, whispered under his breath this time with conviction, not doubt, I can fix it. A week later, Arthur stood in front of a small art gallery tucked away on a quiet street. The windows glowed with soft light, revealing paintings that looked like fragments of someone's soul spilled across canvas. He hesitated before stepping inside. His hands were shaking not from fear of failure, but from the fear of being seen again. Eli had given him a clean shirt, pressed as best as it could be, and said, "You've rebuilt radios and clocks. Now it's time to rebuild your heart." Arthur took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The scent of paint and varnish hit him immediately. People milled about quietly, admiring the art on the walls. But Arthur wasn't looking at them. His eyes searched for one face, his daughter's. Then he saw her. Clara stood near the back, her hair pulled into a loose bun, her hands stained with color. She was thinner than he remembered, older too. But her eyes, those same bright hazel eyes, still carried that spark her mother once had. For a moment Arthur couldn't breathe. He almost turned to leave. But then she looked up. Their eyes met. The noise of the room faded. It was just them, father and daughter, two broken clocks whose gears had long stopped turning. Clara's breath caught, and the palette in her hand trembled slightly. Arthur took a slow step forward, then another, until he was standing just a few feet away. "Hi," he said softly, voice barely a whisper. Clara blinked hard, tears gathering. "You look different." Arthur smiled weakly. "That's one way to say old." Despite herself, she laughed, a small, fragile sound that cracked the wall between them. "You disappeared, Dad. Everyone thought you were gone. The news said you—" "I know," Arthur interrupted gently. "I needed to disappear for a while. I needed to find out who I was without everything I'd built." She studied him quietly. "Did you find out?" Arthur nodded slowly. "I found someone who reminded me what matters. Someone who taught me how to fix things again, starting with myself." Clara's eyes softened. "Was it that man? The one you mentioned on the phone?" "Eli," Arthur said with a small smile. "Yeah, he's the reason I'm standing here today instead of somewhere I don't want to be." They fell silent again. The air between them was heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. "I wanted to give you something." Clara hesitated, then took it. She unwrapped it slowly and gasped. It was the old pocket watch Eli had given him, now polished, repaired, and ticking. "I thought you said it was broken," she said. Arthur smiled. "It was, so was I." Her lip trembled as she looked down at the watch. The steady rhythm filled the quiet space between them like a heartbeat. "You fixed it," she whispered. Arthur nodded. "I tried. Took time, took help. But it works now. Maybe it always could. I just needed to believe it could." Clara's tears finally spilled over. She set the watch down and stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him. Arthur froze for a second, then held her tightly, burying his face in her shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he murmured. "For all the times I wasn't there. For making you feel like you didn't matter. You were always the best thing I ever built." She sobbed quietly, clutching him like she was afraid he'd disappear again. "I missed you, Dad, every single day." He smiled through his tears. "Then let's stop missing each other." For the first time in years, Arthur felt something pure and whole, the warmth of forgiveness. It didn't erase the past, but it softened it, turned it into something he could finally look at without breaking. They stood that way for a long time, until a soft voice interrupted them. "Clara?" They turned. A woman stood by the doorway, holding a cane. Her eyes were kind, her face gentle with age. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Clara smiled. "It's okay, Mrs. Lane. This is my father." Mrs. Lane's eyes widened. "Arthur Vance? The inventor?" Arthur chuckled nervously. "Used to be." She smiled warmly. "Clara's told us stories about you. Good ones, mostly." He looked at Clara, surprised. "You talked about me?" Clara blushed slightly. "Even when I was angry, you were still my dad." Mrs. Lane smiled knowingly. "Then I'll let you two catch up." She walked off, leaving them in a quiet corner. Arthur turned to his daughter. "You have your mother's heart," he said softly. "She'd be proud of you." Clara looked down. I still dream about her sometimes. She always says the same thing. Forgive him. Maybe she knew this would happen. Arthur felt tears rise again. Your mother always saw things I couldn't. They sat together on a bench inside the gallery. Clara told him about her art therapy work, how she used painting to help people heal from trauma. Arthur listened, captivated. Each word from her was a thread weaving them back together. Then she asked, "What about you, Dad? What will you do now?" Arthur thought for a moment. "I think I'll keep fixing things. Not the kind that make money, the kind that matter." Eli and I opened his old workshop again. We're fixing anything people bring us. Sometimes they don't even want the things back. They just want to watch something broken become whole again. It helps them. And me, Clara smiled, tears glimmering. That sounds beautiful. Arthur grinned. You could come by sometime. Maybe paint a new sign for the place. Vance and Eli's Repair and Restore has a nice ring to it. She laughed. You'd actually let me paint the sign? He nodded. Only if you promise to use too much color. She chuckled. Deal! For the first time, their laughter filled the space like sunlight through open windows. People nearby smiled without knowing why. That evening, after the gallery closed, Clara walked him to the bus stop. They stood under the soft orange glow of a street lamp. Dad, she said quietly, are you happy? Arthur thought for a moment, looking up at the night sky. I think I'm learning how to be. Happiness isn't what I thought it was. It's not owning the world, it's being okay with your corner of it. Clara nodded. I like that. He smiled, brushing her hair back gently. Your mother used to say the same thing. Arthur, the world doesn't need fixing, it needs feeling. Took me a lifetime to understand what she meant. The bus pulled up, brakes hissing softly. Arthur stepped forward, then paused. Clara, I'm proud of you. I didn't say it enough before. But I see you now. Really see you. She smiled through tears. That's all I ever wanted. He hugged her once more, then stepped onto the bus. As it pulled away, he looked back through the window. Clara stood on the sidewalk, waving. And for the first time in years, Arthur didn't feel like he was leaving something behind. He felt like he was finally returning when he got back to the workshop. The lights were still on. Eli was at the bench, tinkering with an old lamp. He looked up and grinned. Well, look who found his way home. Arthur smiled, hanging up his coat. She forgave me, Eli. She really did. Eli nodded. Told you. Everything can be fixed, given enough time in the right hands. Arthur sat beside him. You were right. It's not about fixing the world. It's about fixing how we see it. Eli chuckled. You sound like me now? Arthur smirked. Maybe I'm rubbing off on you. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. The ticking clocks on the shelves created a rhythm, steady and reassuring. Then Arthur asked, Eli, why did you help me, really? Eli looked up, eyes distant. Because once a stranger found me sitting on a bench ready to give up. He didn't fix me. He just sat with me, gave me a sandwich. Sighed, sometimes fixing means staying. I never forgot that. Arthur smiled softly. So now you're passing it on. Eli nodded. Guess so. We're all repairmen for someone else's story. Arthur looked around the shop, the worn walls, the smell of metal and oil, the faint hum of life returning, and realized this place wasn't just a workshop. It was a sanctuary for broken things, human and otherwise. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. You know, Eli, maybe the real lesson isn't that everything can be fixed. Eli raised an eyebrow. Oh, what is it then? Arthur opened his eyes and smiled faintly. That some things break us so we can learn how to hold others together. Eli nodded slowly, letting the words settle in the air. Now that, he said, sounds like a man who's finally figured it out. Arthur chuckled. Not figured it out, just finally listening. The night deepened outside, but inside the workshop, the lights glowed warm. The clock on the wall chimed softly -midnight. Eli stood, stretching. Long day. You did good, Arthur. Arthur smiled. We did good? As Eli headed toward the cot in the corner, Arthur stayed at the workbench, staring at the pocket watch ticking gently in his palm. It felt alive, steady like a promise kept, he whispered to himself, with gratitude and peace in his voice. I can fix it. And for the first time, he truly believed it. Weeks passed, and autumn began to paint the city gold. The air carried the crisp scent of change. Inside the small workshop, everything was alive, tools clinking, radios humming, clocks ticking like tiny hearts. Arthur had found rhythm again. People came and went, everyday old women bringing broken lamps, children with toys that no longer sang, young couples clutching heirlooms they were too afraid to throw away. Arthur greeted them all with a gentle smile. He no longer looked like the billionaire who'd lost everything. He looked like a man who'd finally found peace in doing small, quiet miracles. Eli watched him from across the room, his eyes soft with pride. You've got good hands, Arthur. Strong hands. But more than that, you've got them working for the right reasons now. Arthur smiled. You taught me that, Eli. Before you, I thought fixing meant control. Now I know it means care. Eli chuckled. Care, that's the word most folks forget. The doorbell above the shop rang. Clara stepped inside, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. You two still breathing in here? She teased. Arthur grinned. Barely. The dust tries to kill us every day. Eli laughed. It's the smell of hard work. You'll get used to it. Clara placed the coffee on the counter and looked around. This place feels different every time I come. Alive somehow. Arthur nodded. Because every day something broken walks in and something healed walks out, including the people who bring them. Eli smiled faintly. You're starting to sound like me again. Arthur leaned against the bench. Maybe I'm learning from the best. They shared a laugh, and for a while everything was light. But beneath the laughter, Arthur noticed something in Eli's eyes, something distant, like a shadow behind the glow. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to fix the dial on an old clock. You okay, Eli? Arthur asked. Eli nodded quickly. Just tired. These old bones don't run like they used to. Arthur didn't press. He wanted to believe that was all it was. But over the next few days, Eli's fatigue worsened. His smile was slower, his cough deeper, and sometimes Arthur caught him staring out the window like he was waiting for something or someone. One evening, after they closed up, Arthur found Eli sitting on the back steps, staring at the sunset bleeding into the horizon. You ever think about what comes after all this? Eli asked quietly. Arthur sat beside him. After what? This, Eli said, gesturing at the world. The noise, the fixing, the surviving. What happens when we've done all we can? Arthur thought for a long time. Maybe that's when we rest. Maybe that's the final fix, letting go. Eli smiled faintly. You're wiser than you think, Arthur Vance. Arthur chuckled softly. Took me a long time to earn that sentence. They sat in silence, watching the sky turn from orange to violet. For the first time, Arthur felt the weight of gratitude, pure and wordless, for the man sitting beside him. The next morning, when Arthur came to the shop, the door was unlocked. The lights were off, and Eli's cot in the corner was empty. His heart sank. Eli? He called, checking every room. Nothing. On the workbench sat a folded piece of paper and the pocket. Watch still ticking. Arthur picked up the note with shaking hands. It was written in Eli's rough handwriting. Arthur, if you're reading this, it means my time finally stopped ticking. Don't be sad. You fixed more than I ever could. You fixed me too. I used to believe I was a man who lost everything. But then you walked into that diner and gave me a reason to believe in broken things again. Funny how that works, huh? A billionaire and a beggar trading lessons about life. Turns out we were both just men trying to remember how to live. Promise me one thing, keep the shop open. Keep fixing. Not just things, but people. The world's full of both. Oh, and don't forget to wind the clock once in a while. Every heartbeat counts. Eli, Arthur sat down heavily, tears spilling onto the paper. He clutched the watch in his palm, listening to its soft, steady tick. The sound felt like Eli's heartbeat echoing through time. Goodbye, old friend, he whispered. The days that followed were quiet. The shop felt emptier, colder without Eli's laughter filling the corners. But Arthur kept the promise. He opened every morning, fixed every broken piece that came through the door, and every time he turned a screw or polished a hinge, he heard Eli's voice in the back of his mind. Everything can start again. One evening, Clara came by and found Arthur standing in front of the workbench, holding the pocket watch. "You miss him," she said softly. Arthur nodded. "Every day. But I think that's how love works. It doesn't leave it lingers, waiting to be used for something good." Clara smiled gently. "He'd be proud of you." Arthur looked around at the glowing shop. "I hope so. I try to live the way he taught me, to see brokenness as a beginning, not an ending." Clara stepped forward, handing him a small wooden frame. Inside was a painted sign, "Eli and Arthur's Repair and Restore, where broken things begin again." Arthur's eyes welled up instantly. "Clara, it's perfect." She smiled. "I thought it should carry both your names. You built this place together." Arthur took the sign and hung it by the door. The moment it clicked into place, the shop felt whole again. The years went by quietly. Word spread about the little repair shop run by the once billionaire. People came from far away, not because Arthur was famous, but because he listened. He didn't just fix what was broken. He reminded them that it was worth fixing. A young boy once came in, holding a toy car missing a wheel. "Can you fix it?" he asked timidly. Arthur smiled, kneeling beside him. "Of course. You know what we say here?" The boy shook his head. Arthur winked. "We say, if it's broken, it just means it has a story." The boy grinned. "Then mine has a big story." Arthur laughed softly. "Even better." And as he worked, the boy watched in awe, eyes wide as the toy came back to life. When it rolled across the table again, the boy clapped his hands. Arthur handed it back, smiling. "There you go. Good as new." The boy's mother wiped a tear from her cheek. "Thank you, Mr. Vance." Arthur simply nodded. "No need to thank me. Just promise to take care of it and yourself." When they left, Arthur turned off the lamp, looked around the workshop, and whispered, "Still fixing, Eli, just like you wanted." That night, he sat by the window with Clara, watching the streetlights flicker. "You know, sweetheart," he said, "I used to think success meant leaving a mark on the world. Now, I think it means leaving it a little less broken." Clara smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You did that, Dad. You fixed a lot more than you broke." He chuckled softly. "Maybe, but I couldn't have done it without the man who found me in the rain." The pocket watch ticked gently in his hand, marking the quiet rhythm of a life rebuilt. As the night deepened, Arthur closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Eli. He imagined Eli sitting beside him, smiling that same patient smile, and somewhere in the stillness, he could almost hear a voice reply, "You fixed it?" Arthur. The next morning, Arthur opened the shop early. The sun was bright, the world crisp and alive. He flipped the sign to open and took a deep breath of the cool air. A customer entered, a young woman holding an old camera. "It's my dad's," she said softly. "Stopped working years ago. Think you can fix it?" Arthur smiled. "Let's find out." As he set to work, the gears inside the camera clicked, slow but steady. It reminded him of Eli's first lesson: patience, care, belief. The camera came to life again, its shutter flashing. The woman gasped. "It works." Arthur grinned. "Of course it does. It just needed someone to believe it could." The woman smiled. "You're really good at this." He laughed. "No, I just learned from the best." When she left, Ar looked at the photo she'd taken, a candid shot of him by the workbench, smiling. He pinned it on the wall beside a faded picture of Eli. Together, they watched over the workshop. As the day ended, Arthur flipped the sign to closed, turned off the lights, and stood in the doorway, the pocket watch ticking steadily in his palm. He looked up at the fading sunset and said softly, "You were right. Eli, everything can be fixed if you care enough to try." Then he turned off the last light, leaving the little shop glowing faintly under the street lamp. a beacon for every soul who'd ever felt too broken to begin again. And as the city went quiet, a single line hung in the air like a whispered truth: I can fix it.